Good morning, everybody. I'm Alan Blue. I'm one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, and I currently am Vice President of Product. I work on a couple of areas within LinkedIn. The first one is general product strategy and working on the LinkedIn product. The other is working on the LinkedIn economic graph. So are people familiar with this term? You've sort of seen it around? Excellent, a few of you are. The economic graph is essentially the core of what we do at LinkedIn. It all started a long time ago, in 2003 when we founded the company. Back then, we had a vision for what we were actually trying to achieve. We didn't say it in quite these terms. You guys may have actually heard these words because they're a really important part of how we manage at LinkedIn. But the idea of creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce has been part of the company since the very beginning. We started by building a graph, a network of professionals, just of people. And over time, we've added more things to that graph because when you start with people, then you start adding things into it which are associated with those people, like the companies they work for, the schools they've attended, the jobs they might be applying for. And over time, we have built a picture of the economic graph which contains a huge amount of information. So members, companies, jobs, skills, schools, and the knowledge that people are sharing on a regular basis. This has become the foundation for our entire company, and most people engage the economic graph on a daily basis through things like LinkedIn search. Because every time you do a search on LinkedIn, you're in fact searching the economic graph. But there's amazing things you can do with it when you step back from what the economic graph looks like. So imagine a graph that contains 380 million people. It contains millions of companies, hundreds of thousands of schools, 4 million jobs, list of 50,000 skills that we've extracted, assigned across millions of people, so billions of skills across the entire graph. And then this idea that people are sharing knowledge and information through the system. When you actually step back and look at that, you can tell some really interesting things about the world of the economy. And this is where we came up with the term economic graph. Last year, or actually it was the beginning of this year, we did some work with McKinsey Global Institute to try to talk about what kind of impact that economic graph could have in the world. And when they looked at this, they basically found that the economic graph and other products like it, digital labor markets they called it, could have a massive impact on the way the economy in the world works. Trillions of dollars of incremental GDP, millions of additional full-time equivalent jobs, and hundreds of millions of people who are able to get those jobs and benefit in some way from those talent platforms. And if you want to follow the story of the economic graph and get a feeling for it, the best thing to do is to look at the specific insights that we draw from it. So this is an example, and I hope people have actually seen these. The very first one we did had to do with watching people leaving Lehman Brothers in 2009. But over the years, we've gotten pretty good at watching how people flow through the economy. So in this case, we got a couple of examples of how recent graduates move from the places where they went to school into the cities where they're actually doing work. You can actually find a whole bunch of this research online if you go to blog.linkedin.com. It's totally worth going and getting some of that insight. When you're actually able to step back and look at the graph, you're able to see a lot of opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities have to do with those 530 million people we think we can affect. So earlier this year, we began working with the Markle Foundation on a project which was specifically focused on closing the skills gap in the United States. We want to be able to put the power of the economic graph basically in the hands of employers, educators, and job seekers in order to help people close the gap between what they know and what they need to know in order to be able to get great work. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here as a with the head of the Markle Foundation, Zoe Baird. So Zoe, can you come out and join me?
Thank you, Alan.
Absolutely. So why don't you talk a little bit about what we're doing with Rework America
Great.
Connected?
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. You may not come into this room thinking of yourselves as the people on the leading edge of helping your institutions to cross the bridge to the 21st century, but you are. And you will learn, I think, in the course of the day today, why that's true. You know, you're not the professor, you're not the provost. So what's your role in helping your institutions serve the students that come to you and the students that might come to you? We're in a period of time where 70% of Americans don't have a college diploma. And that's been true for decades. But you sit in institutions which have so much to offer people in getting the skills they need to participate in the 21st century economy. And those skills can be earned over the course of a lifetime. So your business model for your schools, what you're providing, doesn't have to end at age 22. That college diploma can be obtained whenever someone's ready for it. I bet there are a few people in this audience who themselves went back and got their college diploma after age 22. And so what we're doing in Rework America Connected is we're saying we have tremendous power with data now. LinkedIn has great capacity to reveal to you and your institutions what the skills are that businesses need so that you can equip people along the way to get those skills, get great jobs, use data to inform what people should study, what's working, give feedback to your own educators about how to improve the way they teach and what they are focused on, and do that over the course of a lifetime so that more than 30% of Americans are able to get the great diplomas you have to offer, but also you're able to give people skills and credentials along the way. And when Alan and I talked this morning, I hope that I'll be able to give you some examples of great four-year colleges that are doing that. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Alan.
You and I actually met at the beginning of this year, the very first time, and it was right before the Markle Foundation held a big event in Sausalito, California. It was actually my first exposure to Markle and to the work you were doing around the economy and making a difference for Americans. So can you talk a little bit about Rework in general? Rework America Connected is only part of it.
Right. So we gathered together about 56, roughly, leaders of educational institutions, presidents of universities, CEOs, tech leaders, government officials, nonprofit leaders, and set about to figure out what we think could really make the difference in the 21st century to rebuild the middle class and to have Americans have growth in wages which have stagnated for decades. All the data, goes back decades. Wages flat, no real growth, people not knowing what to tell their kids to study. And we concluded that the 21st century is about 3 S's. Success will turn on skills and small business. And so we wrote this book called America's Moment, which I invite you to take a look at, which focuses on a range of things we can do to grow small businesses in America, which is really the job creation engine for most middle-skill Americans, and how we can educate people in order to participate in this economy and prepare people for the skills they need.
So say more a little bit about the change that's actually occurring. So you talked about the wages basically not growing, the middle class in trouble. Can you say a bit more about what's actually going on and why we're seeing that?
So I don't know if anyone really knows why, but we know that globalization and technology have had a tremendous pressure on the economy. And I would actually say that what you're seeing play out in the presidential campaign is people's awareness that so much has changed because of globalization and technology, and their anger that the government isn't doing what they would expect the government to do to make the transition. I think this is probably the last presidential election where the issues will sound like old industrial age issues rather than new digital age issues. And I think that people get that more than the politicians get it. And what we're seeing now is that small businesses are our job growth engine, but small businesses aren't connected, for example, to the global economy. So we need to use platforms analogous to LinkedIn in order to get people big data analytics in order to grow small businesses. We need to use platforms to connect people to the growing middle class around the world. There are hundreds of millions of people becoming part of the middle class with demands for healthcare and education. I mean, that's another arena that this group can focus on, which is how to market the great capacity you have to train to the rest of the world, where there are hundreds of millions of potential consumers for education services. So that's how we need to grow our economy. It's got to be connected to the trends that are happening in globalization and technology, not just be beaten up by those trends.
Right, so there were three areas that you identified in the book for areas of focus for individuals, to make individuals more successful. So we definitely want to talk about the part about Rework America Connected, which addresses one of them. But so what are the other things that individuals need to have in order to be successful in the new economy?
Well, the principal thing are skills, and that's why I emphasize the 21st century being about skills and small business. So people need to be able to get the skills that are required. People need to be able to access the jobs that are in need of those skills. We have a lot of jobs that are going wanting. Employers can't find the people they need for that. Mm-hmm. And so people need to be able to have ways to find out where the growth areas are. People need more mobility. We need the kind of thing that the administration announced yesterday, where there's the potential for financial aid for a broader range of skill development activities. And I'm sure that that announcement, which you guys will talk about more today, is both scary for your institutions in that it says, gee, financial aid is going to be distributed across things like coding boot camps that we haven't been providing. On the other hand, it's tethered to your institutions because of their credibility. And so I think that you have to appreciate that puts you in the center of this transformation that people need, and you need to be an engine for that transformation.
Where are the jobs that people are actually going? Where are the opportunities that exist right now for young people who are interested in jumping into a 21st century career?
So there's tremendous opportunity in advanced manufacturing. People who have not thought of themselves as being technically savvy or should be technically trained actually can, you've heard about the challenges of racing against the machine. Well, in fact, there's tremendous opportunity for people to work with machines, to become those people who guide machines, who repair machines, who create the clean workspaces in which machines can work. And there's tremendous opportunity for people in a whole range of IT jobs that are not just ones that require advanced degrees. There's tremendous opportunity in retail, and that's not just online but also on the ground. So there are many growth areas, business and financial services. There are many growth areas that are in need of middle skill workers, people with a high school diploma but not a college diploma. And then there are obviously tremendous opportunities. What we're seeing is that we have sort of a false requirement of a BA degree for a lot of jobs that don't require a BA degree. For example, Burning Glass puts out this data every year that I'm sure you guys look at, And their most recent data showed that over 60% of applicants, postings for executive assistants require a college diploma, when only 20% of the incumbents in those jobs have a college diploma. That job is not one that's probably changed that much in the last couple of years. So we see that BA degree being thrown on as a surrogate for things, and it doesn't necessarily serve your institutions best, because you have people who are coming out of your colleges and universities having a challenge of demonstrating the skills they have for the jobs that are needed. The BA degree is not a good surrogate for the skills that are needed for advanced manufacturing or IT jobs, or even a lot of the management jobs in sectors like retail. It's just not an adequate surrogate. You need more granular information, and we'll talk about this when we talk about connected. But it also doesn't adequately equip people to perform in those jobs. So you begin getting a greater and greater disjunction between what employers want and what they feel they're getting from your institutions. And you're in a great role to align that much better, whether it's through something like Connected or in thinking about how you use data in guiding your own institutions and which programs to emphasize and that sort of thing.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what Connected actually is and works. So let's actually start with the relationship between the employer and the educator. So what do we, I mean, you and I have talked about how we can basically create a kind of feedback loop between those two, so that we've got employers are sending constant signals to the education market about what they actually need, and then educators are able to respond really quickly. So how do we see that process actually working?
So in Connected, what we're trying to do, and of course Alan knows this, but he's turning to me to try to give you more of a feel for this. In Connected, what we're trying to do is to get employers to put out there transparently in the public marketplace what they know inside, which is what skills they really need for a job. So it's not a BA and 4 years of experience, which doesn't tell you a thing about what to say that your institution can provide. Instead, we're working with employers to have them see the value of saying that, literacy, teamwork, this level of biology, that level of statistics is what makes up the people who are already in those jobs, who are doing great at it. And this is really not out of your reach then to respond to. I mean, Purdue, for example, has created a Polytechnic Institute where on your way to, and Mitch Daniel, the president of Purdue, is one of the members of Rework America, and on your way to getting that 4-year bachelor's degree, you get certificates that demonstrate what you have obtained. 70% of Americans don't have a college diploma, but Americans have great skills, and Americans have great capacity to add to their skills. And your institutions need to be part of that. So what Purdue is doing is you get a certificate in leadership of teams. You get a certificate in coding. You get a certificate in web design as you're working towards your 4-year diploma. Well, whether or not you're giving certificates in your institutions, and I think we hope that that's a direction that a lot of colleges will go, and particularly as you think about the fact that you can earn revenue, of course, across a lifetime of a student, not just up to age 22, but whether or not you're giving certificates, you can look at these job descriptions that we're working to make transparent on a skills basis, and you can say, we already do that. We already have courses that provide those skills, or our students have developed this menu of skills and talents by getting our bachelor's degree. So if somebody has our degree in chemical engineering, this is what they acquired, and you can figure out how to articulate that much better if you have the information that we're trying to develop on Rework America Connected about what the employers need. So you're already doing a lot of what's needed in the market, but you don't know what to make transparent. You don't know what to say your graduates have achieved. And so a big part of what we're trying to do is just to create this much more transparent labor market. You know, you've heard people talk about the three parts of the triangle in the 21st century labor market. There's the employer revealing skills, there's the educator revealing what you've learned by getting their degrees or certificates, and there's the individual showing what it is they know. So another thing you can do is you can see, if we really make this robust and it's successful, you'll be able to see what your graduates themselves are putting forward, what they themselves are saying are the skills they have to match to the marketplace, and that'll help you be better in what you're able to promote in your own institutions.
Yeah, so this is one of those places where the economic graph becomes a useful component for making this work, because we can actually tell, say, companies about what the skill composition looks like within their employee base. So when they're actually hiring somebody, we can say, well, these are actually the skills you really need, even holding aside the question of what their educational background actually is. And then you can tie that back to what educators are actually training as a way of sort of putting those two pieces together. So what is the, you talked about certificates a little bit. What's the sort of format that we would expect an individual to see? I mean, what's the change in the experience for the individual going to be like?
Well, that's up to you.
Yeah.
No, I think that we have aspirations for that, and you know, LinkedIn's been a fabulous partner in trying to figure this out, because this hasn't been done before, and it's a real credit to them that they're stepping back from, you know, the immediate business that they know they succeed at with professionals, and saying, you know, what would benefit this huge part of the American labor market that needs so much more. And you know, if you think about this middle skill arena, which is an awful lot of your graduates or the people who come to your institutions and haven't graduated, you've given them a lot even though they haven't graduated, and you have no way of revealing that, and you're getting bashed for the costs and the debt people have run up. But in the course of getting that, running up that debt, people have accumulated skills and talents, and they need to be able to show it better, and you need to be able to show better what people have gotten for the time they put in. So what we hope will be the individual experience is that they'll be able to learn what skills employers want. They'll be able to see what skills that they have with your help, as well as other navigators and help that will give them, to be able to identify how the skills they have match up with the employer needs. And they'll also be able to see what additional skills they need to get. It may be going back to your institutions. It may be going to some other kind of institution. It may be a rapid 6-week course in something. But one of the things I guess I would encourage you to take away is this will happen. We're going to be a big force in making it happen, but it will happen whether or not we're there, because the disaggregation of the workforce is already happening. We have moved from lifetime employment with Fortune 500 companies, and in the 90s we moved from that model of employment in the US to a model of most people working for small businesses, and now we are moving rapidly to a model of not only many careers over the course of a lifetime and many employers over the course of a lifetime, but the further disaggregation of work into hourly work, into the gig economy, the selling of your talents job by job. And in the course of doing that, we need to find ways to make these tools also work for people in the institutions that educate and train them. But this is happening, whether you like it or not. So what we're providing is a way where we can collectively work together to make this succeed for the employers, the educators, and the individuals. And that's really what we're about. We're working on this experiment in Colorado and Phoenix, Rework America Connected, to try to make this succeed for those three parts of the employment triangle. And if we can do that, then we hope to have this spread more broadly throughout the country. But we're going to be learning a lot, and we need to learn with you. But I really want you to go away from today appreciating that this is happening, whether or not you like it. So what we're offering is a way to participate in it, a way to participate in enabling most Americans to benefit from the training and education that institutions like yours can provide.
So let's just paint a quick picture of what the experience would look like from the perspective of a job seeker, because I think that's something that's an experience we all have in common. So I'm a job seeker, and my experience with Rework America Connected will be that I go to Rework America. This will be in Denver or Phoenix. And I can look for a job that I'm actually interested in taking, maybe in one of these target industries, these places where these great opportunities actually exist. And what I see is a list of jobs, and associated with each job, I see training programs that actually get me into taking that role down the line. So a direct relationship between the educator and the employer, so that I know exactly what my pathway is to actually get there. What does the process look like for the educator? So what's from the educator's perspective, what are they going to see as part of this product?
So as an educator, you'll see better what employers are after. You'll have better data on how your graduates match up with those employers. Where are they working? You'll have better information on what skills you should either train to or make transparent that you already trained to. And you'll be able to represent yourself as a place where the individuals coming to Rework America Connected can get the training that they need. And this will require you to look at yourselves a little differently. It's not just a banner ad about your college. You've got to look at yourselves a little harder and say, I've got a department I should promote. I have a experience that it has been, a lot of your institutions have internships and apprenticeships and applied learning. So it's really taking that mirror and saying, what do we have to offer that will be more granular, that will enable people to see either the benefit of what they have, because don't forget, a big part of your making that transition to the digital economy is helping the people who've been through your institution see what they have to offer in the market, and being able to herald that and being able to be the successes in the market. So that's part of it, and part of it is to also then look at what it is that you need to promote that you have going and what you need to encourage to develop.
So you've got a great opportunity to basically to target your audience more effectively, to sort of get in front of the people who are actually trying to make a very specific education decision. So you'll have more information about the kinds of things they're looking for, more information about what your graduates actually are doing right now, so more visibility into what those things are, and basically the ability to sort of maybe think about your, if you will, product line of different degrees and programs and so forth in a more granular way. Are there other opportunities that we see for educators down the line? I mean, one of the big things that I think could come out of a system like this is that you get a lot more attention on a program that works. So any other things that we think this audience could take away from, like, hey, this is a great opportunity for us?
Yeah, you've all followed the efforts by the federal government to try to create more transparency and outcomes from educational investment. And that's another trend that is happening, like it or not. And this enables you to take control of that process too. If we're successful, you'll be able to see yourselves in your own dashboards. What's the, with transparency, what are the successes? What hasn't worked as well? And to give feedback to your own institutions so that they can get ahead of the curve, because the transparency in educational outcomes is coming. You know this, you've seen the initiatives that are being taken at the federal level, and states are doing it too. So you can take control of that process.
So paint a picture, if you will, about kind of what education might look like, or some of the things that might be part of education, say in 5 or 10 years. Both the things which are inevitably coming, but also the things which we're hoping to actually spur.
So lifetime education. You are not a failure at age 22 if you have not gotten that college diploma. Lifetime education is huge. It's a big business potential for universities that they're not adequately focused on, but it's real. Disaggregating your product into certificates, into badges, whatever you're calling it in your own institution, credentials, relationships with businesses to build out programs so that sectors that are in need of workers, trained workers like cybersecurity and energy, advanced manufacturing and biotech, collaborations between educational institutions and those sectors. And, you know, again, I mean, just to prod you to prod your institutions, because my guess is you're all pretty forward-thinking within your institutions. This is coming. If you don't do it, a coding boot camp will do it. I mean, the head of one of our leading tech companies introduced me to his daughter recently, and he wanted me to meet his daughter because she's an undergraduate at Yale in computer science, and she felt she had to spend her summer in a coding boot camp in order to get a job. So this is coming. And you guys can really be on the leading edge of having your institutions understand that you need to create partnerships with some of these non-traditional institutions, or you need to give these certificates or diplomas yourself, that you need to work with employers in order to, and with sectors, entire sectors of employers, in order to really create, with the speed of change that we're seeing, the kinds of programs that are going to enable your graduates to succeed. And I think you're going to be feeling these pressures, you know, whether you like it or not. So it's really important that you focus on what tools you can bring to your institutions to have them participate effectively in these market changes.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think that the transparency regarding outcomes and the relationship between education and jobs is going to be a tremendously important force on a go-forward basis. It's highly likely, as a matter of fact, that transparency is going to lead to a gigantic boom, I mean much larger than we've seen so far, among the coding boot camps and online educators and so forth, because it's going to be an opportunity for other types of education to compete effectively for individuals who actually want to get training. One of the really challenging things, I think, is how does we know there will be a tighter and tighter relationship between career outcomes and education. How can we basically how do we believe that we can take as institutions, how can we learn from each other effectively in order to be able to basically take best practices from one and sort of apply it at other institutions?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I was actually talking with Allison from LinkedIn earlier about how to create that feedback loop as part of Rework America Connected, and it's a broader issue for people. You know, we need to use the power of big data analytics to aggregate information and to really learn about what's working and where the matches are good, and then to provide it in feedback. The challenge in educational institutions, as with any established institution, is how do you actually use what you learn to change what's happening within your institution? That's the harder problem. But the problem that we can contribute to is to really provide the information both in usable ways, but to share best practices. Let's find out what's happening with Purdue and with other experiences like that, and let's make sure that that gets shared. And one of the things we're trying to do is to share our failures as well as our successes. You know, the old adage that you learn more from your failures than your successes, but I think we have to be prepared, and I realize it's tough in a political environment. It's tough when you have a lot of scrutiny from state legislatures and challenges to you know, getting that funding. But we really need to create a learning environment in the whole system that supports education, and we hope to do that through greater revelation of data and information, and to have that become a part of how we challenge ourselves as well as a part of how we showcase ourselves.
So if you were to give advice to anybody in the room about what leadership looks like for an educational institution, what would you tell them? I mean, what should they take back, and if they wanted to turn their organization into a leader in this area, what would that look like?
I think it's really important to be prepared to say that you're industrial age institutions. We created the high school, we built out our investments in colleges in an industrial age, which was centralized employers, most people working for Fortune 500 companies, centralized government, centralized knowledge, and now we have the capacity. In fact, we have broken up so many of those systems that we now have a decentralized world in which we're living. You have as much information, you know, in your iPad, your iPhone. Most people in this country have a smartphone. It's really a remarkable thing how information has been made available to everyone. Things have been disaggregated. You can get a very sophisticated problem solved for you in 5 minutes using a smart device. You don't need to go to college for 3.5 years to, you know, learn how to solve that problem. So leadership will mean creating rapid, low-cost, disaggregated capacity for people to get talents and skills, while in the course of that, having all that add up to something that is larger than just knowing a lot of factoids. So your institutions have a huge role in continuing to shape an educated population. But I think you need to appreciate the extent to which technology and globalization has changed people's capacity to learn and to develop skills, and look at your own institutions and what they have to offer at a much more granular level.
How do you think that colleges and universities can, if you will, go even further down the chain into K through 12 education in order to help affect how students are being prepared even before they get to college?
So here I'll use Purdue as another example. Purdue, in addition to creating this Polytechnic Institute at the university, is creating a Polytechnic high school. And they're working with the high school to create very similar kinds of learning. You know, certificate in leadership, a certificate in teamwork, a certificate in statistics, a certificate in coding, you know, the kinds of things that you might otherwise have to go to a MOOC or a coding boot camp for, or something. They're trying to do within the institution. And I think that's a significant part. You know, a lot of states now are very excited about this notion of pre-K to grade 14 as the way they think about their education systems, that it's not, doesn't end at grade 12 anymore, but that, you know, that pre-K to 14 is their mantra and the way they're thinking about things. And, you know, that can either be a challenge to you, or it can be something where you really can contribute. And I think thinking about how people make the transition from particularly high school into higher ed is a dialogue that's going to be happening in a lot of states.
Got it. So I know we've spent a lot of time working with Michael Crow from ASU. Are there specific things that we can learn, this group can learn from what Michael's doing?
Yeah, Michael's a great educational innovator, and I'm sure you've all read about him. And ASU has created very robust online courses where people get their bachelor's degree online or their engineering degree online. They have recognized in the Starbucks College Achievement Plan, which grew out of our work in Rework America, that people will need to be serviced in getting that college diploma where they reside rather than just going to a campus, but also that it is this lifelong learning model that people may not have the time, may not be ready to get their college diploma when they're younger, but when they're out working, they may still aspire to get it. So the College Achievement Plan is enabling Starbucks employees to get that online diploma. And there are other companies that are innovating in learning and training as well in that lifelong model. So I think that there's a great opportunity for you to be thinking about innovation yourself in ways that are similar to what ASU is doing with your own local institutions and creating partnerships that help local employers use your resources in training their employees over the course of a lifetime.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier was on Navigators, so somebody who can help an individual make choices regarding education and career and so forth. I know that person is super important. So how should we be thinking about, and how should colleges think about integrating the activity of a navigator into a student's experience?
So in the Starbucks College Achievement Plan, ASU hired 50 people to play this role. And there are 1,000 students who've already enrolled. Maybe there are 2,000 this next year expected. So really high proportion of navigators to students. This is a really important role. It's a place where I think there may be some state and local institutions that can help play the role in the course of their own workforce development. But it is something for you to think about. You have counselors. Can your counselors become more navigators that help a broader number of people figure out how using your institution is the place to go to get the skills that they need? And some of those may be online navigators, which obviously are lower cost than in-person navigators, but some people need in-person navigators. But one of the things I'd point out to you in appreciating how important this part of the market is for your institutions is that we did some focus groups, and we're going to do some polling, but we did some focus groups and asked people who were already in good jobs whether or not they looked for work, and every single person raised their hand saying they were looking for a different job. Every single person. That's a huge opportunity for you. If we have a workforce which is unhappy with their present capacity to increase their wages, which is unhappy with their understanding of what to tell their kids to study, that is a tremendous opportunity for you. And I would really encourage you to be watching this experiment that we're undergoing, but to experiment yourself with what this kind of information and knowledge can help your institutions contribute, so that when I'm back here next year, I'm talking about your university or your college's contribution to transforming the labor market, because it really can be done compatibly with what you're already teaching. You're teaching people great skills, but not enough people know what that is. And your capacity to do that and to connect that to the great jobs that are out there. We have millions of jobs in this country, 4 to 5 million jobs that can't be filled. There are plenty of jobs out there for the people who develop these skills.
And what role do you think that the alumni of an educational institution can play? Because one of the things which is potentially great, this comes out of the economic graph, is knowing a lot about the people who used to attend your institution. I've always thought they might make really good navigators. But are there other, I mean, maybe that's the primary maybe it's one of the primary ways in which they can contribute to the current student base?
Yeah, it's a really good idea. And another way they can contribute is if you can find ways to reveal what those people do. You know, most people work in a job that either their family or their neighbor has worked in because that's what they know. They don't know what it looks like to be someone who's a coder. You know, they don't know what it looks like to be a paraprofessional in healthcare unless their family member or neighbor does that. So it's another way where you can use video and your alumni to have people just understand what other kinds of jobs look like and what your alums are doing.
Yeah, so it's one of the things which I think is I would highly recommend to everybody here would be to think about alumni. Think about, like, are there ways in which your alumni could be useful to making sure that you can drive success for the people who are currently attending your institution or may come back in the future to attend it? It's also a good way to stay in touch with them and for various other reasons, development or maybe even bringing them back for a later degree. So I just have one more question that I want to ask, which I think is going to be interesting for everybody, which is, how do you think students will choose institutions in the future? What is a student going to be thinking about and looking for? What's going to influence a student in the way they make a choice about a college or university?
I think all the data shows that increasingly people want to know that for their investment dollars in going to school, they're going to get return. And there is great uncertainty about that now for even college graduates. So I think given this data-driven younger generation, of which many of you are a part, you're going to respect the places that are part of that, or part of the technological change, or part of the arena of transparency of information, and that's where people will, I think, increasingly find the institutions that they respect and that they flock to.
And so what does that mean for how colleges should be speaking to individuals?
Well, I think it's really important to show that you understand the challenges that they're confronting and that you're not just saying we're going to give you a breadth of education which will make you a better person, but that you're also saying that you're going to be able to be a leader, you're going to be able to be a contributor, you're going to be able to create your own path, and that we're going to help empower you to do all that. And a lot of that is going to be through helping people see what those talents and skills are that they get, not just the diploma. I think increasingly the people who are looking at your institution and looking at whether it's worth the investment are going to be asking themselves, okay, you know, yes, there's a diploma, but there's so many people I know with a BA who are working as an executive assistant, and that's not what I want for myself. So what does this institution have to offer me? Does it get it? And I think that's really increasingly what students are going to be asking.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking with us. And it's been great working with you on Rework America Connected.
It has been for us too. Thanks, Alan. Okay.